everyone, I'm Jill Leonard-Pingel, and I'm here today to wish you a very happy National Fossil Day from the Orton Geological Museum. Now, normally we would love if you came to visit us on National Fossil Day, but as things are, we decided that today we would come to you into your homes, and so we have some of our interesting, fun fossils that we like from the Orton Geological collection that we'd like to share with you. Some of you had mentioned that you really wanted to see fossils that were really old, so some of the oldest fossils that we can find in Ohio. And in Ohio, the oldest fossils that we can find come from the Ordovician period, which goes from about 485 to about 444 million years ago. So that's the period of time that's the Ordovician. And we have lots of Ordovician fossils in Ohio, and so we just picked some of our favorites to show you today. So the first one I have, this is a stromatoporoid, and in the museum we affectionately refer to this specimen as SpongeBob round pants, right? Because a stromatoporoid is, like SpongeBob, a sponge, although not yellow, probably, we don't know. But stromatoporoids were sponges, and they were major reef builders during the time period of the Ordovician. Unlike SpongeBob SquarePants, they had a skeleton made of calcium carbonate, so they weren't soft and squishy like a lot of the sponges that you think of today. And so this calcium carbonate skeleton allowed them to grow and become pretty large and become important reef builders. So they provided habitat for other animals. So this example shows a sort of a round morphology, a round shape of stromatoporoids, but they could actually grow in lots of different forms. This example of a stromatoporoid is also kind of interesting, so you might be able to see that it's kind of sparkly in here. So that's an example of recrystallization. So the calcium carbonate that originally made up the stromatoporoid has, in this case, been recrystallized, and so you can see lots of these little calcite crystals, which gives it kind of like a sparkly, pretty look. Okay, so that is SpongeBob round pants. And now we have some of SpongeBob's friends from the Ordovician. So as you know, SpongeBob would not be complete without his buddy. Here's an example of a fossil starfish from the Ordovician. Now, starfish are actually pretty rare in the fossil record. Starfish do have little tiny pieces of calcium carbonate in their skeleton, but these little pieces of rods and spines and plates of calcium carbonate, they're called ossicles, if you want a little bit of trivia knowledge for today. They're actually not fused together into like one big solid skeleton. They're held together by soft parts. And so normally when starfish die and decompose and the soft parts are gone, starfish end up just falling apart basically into sand. But we are lucky enough to have this starfish preserved from the Ordovician, probably because it was buried in a storm deposit, or maybe there was an underwater landslide that quickly buried this starfish, so we have it preserved today. So if you can see that there's lots of these little bumps, so those are the little ossicles. There's also something really cool about this starfish, and I don't know if you'll be able to guess it right away, but let's do a little bit of counting. So there's one arm here, one arm here, one arm here, one arm here. So we've got 4 arms, nicely preserved. We have another arm that you can kind of see coming up here, and then over here on this side, there is the preservation of a beginning of another arm here. So that would give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 arms. Does anyone out there know how many arms starfish normally have? Yep, the answer is 5. So not only do we have a really cool fossilized starfish from the Ordovician, we've also got a fossilized mutant starfish. So pretty cool, we like him a lot. Ordovician fossil. These are called solitary rugose corals, and sometimes also known as horn corals. So they look, if you look at them closely, you might see they look like little horns, or maybe little horns that you blow, or maybe little cornucopias. So you can choose your analogy, whatever you prefer. But these solitary rugose corals were also important reef builders, just like our stromatoporoid that I already talked about. While they were solitary, they could grow in large numbers. So if you think of like a little garden of corals growing together, they also sometimes grew in very close proximity to the stromatoporoids. And there's actually some examples where you have rugose corals growing into stromatoporoids. So they were working together to form reefs during the Ordovician. So they're both really important keystone species, but they're species that are making habitat and making a place to live for other animals. So here, once again, these are their rugose corals, and they look kind of plain and gray today, but we have to imagine that they could have looked like corals that we have today and may have been very bright colors. All we're seeing preserved is the skeleton. And so coming out, if you imagine what these guys would look like, here's the skeleton, and then coming out here at the top would have been the soft part of the coral body, the polyp and all the tentacles coming out. And that could have been very brightly colored, and they were probably very beautiful in the Ordovician seas. Next up for our Ordovician fossils is the trilobite isotelus. And as you might know, this is the state invertebrate fossil of Ohio. So once again, this was running around the seas during the Ordovician, right? Not a reef builder like the rugose corals or the stromatoporoids that we've already talked about, but probably living in and around these reefs. So trilobites are really cool because they represent a whole bunch of different feeding strategies during the Ordovician and actually throughout the Paleozoic. So some of them were probably burrowing into the sediment, eating deposits, and living off organic material and detritus there, and some were predators. So they really represent a really wide range of life habits and styles throughout the Ordovician. All right, so no sneak peek of the museum collections would be complete without a sneak peek at some dinosaur bones. And so I know there were a lot of you out there who were like, show us dinosaur bones. So we're doing that. So what I've got in my hands right now, this is a T-Rex toe bone. So if you think about your toes and the T-Rex toes, you can see T-Rex toes were quite a bit bigger. Another really cool thing that I want to point out to you today is that, so here is the T-Rex toe bone, but I also have here today the skeleton of a chicken. So just a plain old chicken, nothing fancy. But what I want you to notice is this toe bone right here on the chicken, which is, I don't know, maybe about 1 centimeter long. You can see right there, the one I'm pointing to. So the chicken has the toe bone, T-Rex has the toe bone, they're the same shape, they're obviously not the same size. But anyway, so that can give you a little bit of perspective, both into how we know that the dinosaurs and birds are related, that birds are in fact dinosaurs, and also to give you sort of a little sense for the scale difference. It's really cool to look at this T-Rex toe bone, but I have bad news. This is not actually from Ohio. And many of you are asking and wondering why we don't have dinosaur fossils from Ohio. And that's because during the Mesozoic, when dinosaurs were roaming the earth, Ohio was actually on land. So it's very possible that dinosaurs were roaming across Ohio, but in the time period since then, all of that land has been eroded away. So all of those rocks, all of those deposits that would have built up during the Mesozoic are no longer here. So there's no place to look for dinosaur fossils in Ohio. So I guess you can thank the glaciers for that. So we're gonna wrap up today's National Fossil Day sneak peek by looking at this mammoth tooth. So we're back to fossils from Ohio, and Ohio actually really has a very diverse Pleistocene fossil assemblage. So we have got lots of great Pleistocene vertebrates to make up for our lack of dinosaurs. And one of those vertebrates that are very common in the fossil assemblages of Ohio are mammoths. The mammoth teeth are very large, right? So it would take a mammoth would have to have a very big toothbrush to brush its teeth. Now, one thing I want you to look at on this mammoth tooth is the shape of the tooth. It looks kind of like a washboard, right? And so kids, if you don't know what a washboard is, go ask your grandma. So this washboard shape is really good for grinding things, like grass, which is actually pretty hard to grind. And so animals that eat a lot of grass have these teeth that have a good grinding surface. So from looking at the mammoth teeth, we know that mammoths were eating a lot of grass. They were grazers. And they would use this washboard shape to sort of grind all of that great grass that they're eating down so that they could eat it. Another cool fun fact is that the mammoths were actually the only animal that we looked at today that would have coexisted with humans. So there's lots of good evidence that humans were actually hunting mammoths and eating mammoths. So If you are tired of your dinner tonight and you're tired of eating pork or beef or chicken, you can just imagine that you were eating mammoth. I'm not sure how it would taste. Right, well, thanks for tuning in and joining us on National Fossil Day. We hope that you have a really great National Fossil Day. If you have fossils that you want to share, you can add them to the comments. And we really hope that we will be able to see you in person at the Orton Geological Museum soon.